Good afternoon, and welcome to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters, here on Radio Turks and Caicos, sponsored by Flow. I am your host, Imtanizia McCartney, the Public Education Officer for the Integrity Commission. And today I have here with me one of my colleagues, Mr. Richard Mills. He's the Senior Investigative Officer for the Integrity Commission. Welcome, Richard Mills.
Hello, good afternoon.
Just to tell you a little bit about my colleague, Richard. He was a former UK police officer serving within the Metropolitan Police Service for over 30 years. He served in a variety of roles: General Public Officer, Public Order, General CID Remit, Scotland and Detective Tackling Crime, Drugs, Firearms, Intelligence, Surveillance, Serious and Organized Crime. Richard has also spent 6 years targeting corrupt police officers and those criminal networks who sought to corrupt them within the Met Police Anti-Corruption Command. This included brief postings and an advisory capacity to the Romanian Anti-Corruption Directorate. Richard has also served as a detective inspector, leading to a proactive team which targeted serious and organized crime involving cradle-to-grave investigations of seizures of firearms, multi-kilo quantities of drugs, associated financial crimes, and threat to life scenarios within challenging environments. Upon leaving the police, he spent a short spell working within a further intelligence remit. Then he spent 2 years at the UK Serious Fraud Office investigation, grand scale bribery and corruption. Richard has since joined the Integrity Commission as the intelligence officer in 2017, where shortly afterwards he became the Commission's Senior Investigation Officer, with responsibility for oversight and investigation of all allegations of corruption reported within the Turks and Caicos and management and development of all intelligence-related matters. He is indeed well qualified for the position. Before we go into our conversation to talk about the enforcement arm within the Integrity Commission, we will hear a word from our sponsor.
Elevate your experience with Flow's fiber-fast internet and mobile combined. Enjoy double data and unlimited talk on 4 mobile lines. Plus up to 75 megabits per second home internet speed at the best rate, giving you the best value to stay connected. Hon, I think our Flow Mobile is elevated.
You think?
An elevated experience starts with Flow at home, powering double data and unlimited talk on 4 mobile lines at the best rate. Visit a Flow store to sign up today.
Welcome back to today's program on 89.1 FM RTC. If you're just joining me, I'm your host, Imtanizia McCartney, and you're listening to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters. We have with us today Mr. Richard Mills, our Senior Investigative Officer. I also wish to shout out to Flo for this opportunity to share with each of you here in the Turks and Caicos Islands, as well as those who are listening regionally and internationally. Our aim over the next few weeks is to give each of you a better understanding about the Integrity Commission as we lead in combating corruption so that public resources can be used fairly for the benefit of all TCI people. Last week, we spoke about the commissions, its overall role and function, our history, and the role that each citizen has to play if we are to have a corruption-free Turks and Caicos Islands. We should be aware, however, that although the Commission was enacted after a very controversial period in our history, the suspension of the Constitution and the Sir Robin Auld Report Commission of Inquiry, that the Commission began as a result of the revised Constitution of 2008, which also gave way to our premiership. There were also other institutions of good governance that was also incorporated in that revised Constitution. Today, we are here, however, to talk about the Integrity Commission and the critical and challenging tasks and the role that the Commission has to play, a much-needed conversation that we all have to have if we want a better, improved Turks and Caicos. So I hope that after this much-needed conversations and engagements over the next 5 weeks, that much clarification will be provided on such a delicate and sensitive matter, and we would have gained your support as citizens, as residents within the Turks and Caicos Islands, to help to be an ambassador, an integrity ambassador for the Integrity Commission. Please, if you have any questions, you too can be a part of the program. Simply email your questions to ask@integritycommission.tc. So email your questions to email address ask@integritycommission.tc. Before we start our conversation, I wish to share with you that we do appreciate that we have honest, genuinely dedicated, hardworking people throughout the government service that loves the Turks and Caicos Islands and are serving each day to make it better. However, we must also note that there are persons at various levels that may not be as sincere and may be engaging in acts of corruption or breaching the code of conduct. And so this initiative is to improve the awareness of each citizen, and we again thank RTC and FLO. So today we have Mr. Richard Mills, our Senior Investigative Officer, here with us. And you must note that because it's enforcement, there may be some things that we may not be able to discuss. However, we will be sharing with you what is most important so you can be more informed about the investigation role of the Integrity Commission. So Mr. Richard Mills, please share with us, discuss to a point, the role and the function of the investigation arm of the Integrity Commission.
Sure. Thank you, Antonisha. So the enforcement team basically consists of myself and 3 other investigators. We're all experienced ex-police officers internationally from around the world, and our remit is to investigate any and all allegations of corruption that are reported within the Turks and Caicos Islands, and also to gather intelligence with a view to development of that, and seek to target individuals that are perhaps corrupt within the Turks and Caicos Islands. A little similar to police in some ways, we have powers of arrest, we have powers where we can obtain search warrants, where we can search addresses and remove and seize suspected evidence of offences. We can interview suspects under caution, and subsequently, should the matter reach a threshold of charging, once the decision has been made by the DPP's office, then we would charge that individual, and the court process would take place after that.
Of course. So thanks for clarifying that you not only have a role to investigate any breaches and the acts of corruption, but also that you have the powers of arrest as well as the power to seize and the power to also interview
That's correct.
persons
Yes.
to garner information that may be
Yeah.
needed. And
Yeah.
so if you are approached or called by the investigation team, we would ask that you would comply, and we know that there are other stipulations and factors to come into play, and we'll talk about it in a
Sure.
bit, where
Yeah.
if it's necessary, you can get your lawyer, but if you're called, it may not necessarily be you that is the prime suspect. It just may be that you are in the loo and the information that is needed or necessary in order to carry out the investigation.
Sure, just to follow up on that point, obviously our remit is to investigate corruption within government
Of course.
officials. Obviously there's codes of conduct, codes of practice within the civil service, and there's certainly an expectation, if not even perhaps a civil duty of an expectation, that people will assist us when we speak to them. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a suspect. We might be seeking some information from them, and we would request, and like that, any request similar to that to be acknowledged, and the information that we require presented back to us in a timely fashion.
Indeed, and just to re-emphasize that the purview of the Integrity Commission is presently the civil service, those who have given themselves in service to the Turks and Caicos Islands, and that's inclusive of statutory board members as well. And under the legislation, the Integrity Commission ordinance, you do have a duty to report.
Yep.
And you do have a duty to comply if you're being sought to have an interview.
Absolutely. And
well.
if necessary, obviously we have powers to arrest people and conduct those interviews following that. Yes, we do that where we have to, but
Yes.
ordinarily if somebody we ask to come in and give an interview voluntarily, we would obviously look to do that where we possibly can.
Yes, and it's important to emphasize that arrests are only done if absolutely necessary.
Yes.
Of course. So how is the investigation process carried out? And go ahead.
Okay, so that would depend entirely on the nature of the allegation, the complexities of it. Do we have some witnesses? Obviously, what we would look to do initially is seek to get some sort of a first and proper account from the initial person that's making the allegation. Perhaps there are some other witnesses that we would need to speak to. Following on from that, it might be a case of, right, where could we perhaps gather some evidence from, and there may be opportunities outside of an arrest or prior to an arrest where we could obtain certain documents, things like that, and then obviously there'd become a point where we make a decision: do we arrest? Do we not need to arrest on this occasion? We look as per the sort of the British legal system. Is it proportionate? Is it necessary to arrest this individual? Each set of circumstances can differ. So, for example, it may be apparent that we would be seeking to glean evidence from a suspect where we suspect there may be material at his home address or her home address or the office premises, in which case it may be that we look to obtain a search warrant to go to the address, to arrest the subject, to search and seek that material. On the other end of the spectrum, it might be a case of, do you know what, all we might need to do is actually speak to this individual. We could ask them to come in. They're entitled to bring a solicitor should they wish to, and then we would arrange a date to their convenience. They come in and we can have an interview. It may or may not be under caution, depending on the circumstances of if it's a criminal offence or not. And then obviously that individual will seek to answer as they see fit. But what I would point out is, just because you receive a request or a telephone call from myself or one of my team, please don't automatically think that you are in trouble and we're looking to catch you out for something.
Definitely
We're
not.
not there for people that make innocent mistakes.
Yes.
You may be a witness. If you're a witness, we would like to hear from you and for you to tell us what you can about a particular incident where possible.
Yes, and I'm glad you pointed it out, not because you're being asked to talk to us, talk to the investigation team to be specific.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're the suspect or you've done something
No,
wrong. And
absolutely
just
not.
to allay that fear, and also to put it out there that the Integrity Commission is not there to just see when someone makes a mistake and go ahead and arrest and charge them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I want to make clear. Where there are clear allegations of corruption, we will investigate them. We will investigate them robustly. And I'm sure some of the listeners might think, no, they don't do that. Trust me, we
Yes,
do.
indeed.
We have numerous allegations reported to us. There are priorities and what we sometimes look at, but we will look at them. But just because we ask to speak to you, please do not automatically assume that we think you have done something wrong. And equally, if a genuine mistake has been made, please let us know that at the earliest opportunity as well. Don't try to hide it. Everybody makes a mistake.
Of course.
We can deal with that. If it's something that we may call organisational learning or something from that, the person can go away and they might need a little bit more training or something like that. Well, that's a matter for the department to perhaps decide. But we don't just drag people in for the sake of it or because they've made a mistake.
Definitely, and it's great that you pointed out that you follow the evidence.
Yes.
You just follow the evidence. And the other thing also to note is that it's not a mistake that has been made, because therein is the learning opportunity or experience
Sure.
for the organization to grow.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between an honest, genuine mistake that's made based on you making a decision and good faith
Absolutely.
based on the information that you have
Yeah.
at this present moment,
Yeah.
versus you knowing that there's a conflict or you knowing that something is wrong and proceed with it with the attitude that,
Yep.
too bad, I don't care. So there is a difference.
Yeah, we're
And-
not. We are not there to cause a problem with an individual that's made a genuine mistake. Departments can reach out to us, whether it be myself or the education side of things, and we can offer advice if somebody has made a genuine mistake. As I say, we're not out to cause that individual an issue. Mistakes always get made, but it's usually advisory to offer up at an early opportunity, look, I made a mistake, this is what happened, and it may be something that the department can just deal with internally and doesn't need to involve us.
Exactly, and I also too wanted to put out within that breath, if there's something that you're questioning where you may need to consult someone, that we're here for you to
Yep.
consult so that we can guide you in the right way as well.
Absolutely.
And that's also a part of our mandate in working with public bodies to see where the gaps can be closed, where we can protect persons from themselves, even protect the entity from any legal ramifications.
Yeah,
and,
indeed,
And even from the reputation being tarred because of the decision being made because of lack of information or lack of guidance. The Integrity Commission is there to support in that way.
Yeah, under Section 13, I think it is, of our ordinance, we have powers to advise or instruct on certain matters where we need to do that, and we don't want to step in. We're not here to run the country. We're not here to run departments. But if there's an integrity issue, or we feel that there's something that perhaps needs addressing, we will look to do
We are
that
here
where
to
we
help.
can. And there's an expectation, obviously, that when we do it, that it should be complied with. We don't ordinarily do it as a matter of course, but we do have those powers when we need to use them. Yeah.
Of course, and confidentiality is maintained as well.
Absolutely.
So it's not something that we'll go and talk about,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we're here to help and support. When the decision is being made, and I have to ask that, I know you started and you provided that it's either for an inquiry, either an arrest, either you just need information, or it may be circumstances where you need to seize items or so forth, information intelligence. However, because we usually hear about the Integrity Commission and with regards to arrests, and we know that that's not the only role and function that the Integrity Commission plays. When does it become absolutely necessary for an arrest and a charge?
Okay, so first of all, I would point out that we don't actually arrest that many people. We obviously have a relatively small team. We get a considerable number of allegations, all of which get looked at, reviewed, assessed and dealt with, but we don't actually arrest too many people at all. When we do, it's based on necessity, proportionality, and as a result of evidence or significant suspicions that somebody has committed an act of corruption. At any given time, we might have a very small amount of people on bail prior to any charging decision having taken place, who we may have arrested, or where we can sometimes, if we suspect that an investigation may be quite convoluted and go on for a number of months prior to being able to present the full evidential package to the Office of the DPP, we may seek to say, you're not on bail, you're released. However, there may be a point later on where we would seek to call you back in, and again, an expectation that you will come, because if you don't, and there's new evidence that we are finding in relation to it, we're just going to end up where we have to arrest an individual and go through a slightly longer process. In relation to the numbers of arrests, they are quite small in comparison to the number of allegations that we do actually receive.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's very important also for them to know that it's only when it's absolutely necessary.
Yes.
Absolutely necessary. So can you share and explain the difference between the breaches in the Code of Conduct versus acts of corruption, one being criminal or one being conduct?
Sure.
Terms
Okay.
of behavior.
So we receive allegations, and we will look at allegations of anything from an allegation where an individual has, who's a government employee, has supposedly taken, say, a $50 bribe for doing or not doing something, and that gets reported to us, all the way up the food chain to the top of government, to ministries, ministers, and so on down the chain. And we get allegations across the spectrum in relation to that. Now, sometimes the allegation may have an inference of corruption within it, but we dig a little bit deeper, and it may be what we categorise as, say, a code of conduct, conflict of interest type scenario. So we try where we can to advise an individual that they are conflicted with their own personal interests in relation to the role within government that they perform. Ordinarily, as a result of advising on that, people would, or it's anticipated that people may look to remove or avoid that interest. Either they remove themselves from government, or they remove themselves from that private business entity, or they can put it in a trust. Again, we have guidance on how to avoid that. There are occasions when people don't wish to take that advice, which means that sometimes we have to look a bit closer in relation to what's going on. There are further occasions, again within the ordinance, where it's suggested that a conflict of interest may amount to an act of corruption. So it's just something that needs to be borne in mind. So I use the conflict of interest one as an example because we do get quite a few of those, and if the threshold is not reached of what may be considered to be a criminal offence, then the matter would be reported to our commissioners. They would review it, and they may or may not make a decision on whether that individual should be heard on what we call a code of conduct hearing, where again it's a little bit like court proceedings, but to a lesser scale, and obviously the individual's given an opportunity to be heard and decisions made after that. Alternatively, it may be that an individual within government perhaps has, irrespective of the initial allegation of corruption, it may be they've made they've breached the code, shall we say, for civil servants. However, it doesn't reach the threshold for a criminal offence of corruption. It may be the case that we would obtain the evidence and refer the matter back to that department, to that director, to perhaps the PS of that, or even up to the level of the Deputy Governor, with an expectation from the recommendations that we provide that some form of consequences, I'll call them, may take place as a result of it. It's not for us to act as judge and jury on these things. We go out, we pull the facts together, we report them. It then becomes a matter perhaps for the ministry on those occasions. And obviously the other side of that are the individuals who we feel there is sufficient evidence of a criminal offence of corruption. We will pull the papers all together in relation to that, glean the evidence, and we then hand that whole file over to the Director of Public Prosecution's Office, where a decision is made by that office, obviously in conjunction with ourselves. Matters get discussed, but ultimately a decision is made by them as to whether to charge and bring the matter before the court, or it may be that a decision reached that there is insufficient evidence, or if we went away and we obtained a little bit more evidence and to go back to them, then there may be an opportunity to charge. So there's a number of different scenarios as to how events turn out at the end of the day.
And the outcome. So thanks very much, Richard, for sharing with us thus far your role and the role that you play as the senior investigative officer, your team, as well as the outcomes. Of course, based on the allegations that are made, you follow the evidence, and then the outputs are either that is referred to the commission, where we can have a commission of inquiry, it's either or handed over to the DPP's office, where they can decide to prosecute in court, or you can be asked to provide more meaningful or more evidence to support the allegations that are being made. And we also talked about the SBAC in your role, where you can interview persons, and the public service, the civil service, actually has a duty to comply. They can do it either with their lawyer, or they can do it under caution. I think you.
Absolutely. They're entitled to a lawyer under any circumstances, whether it's, if they want to pay and bring a lawyer, whether it's something discipline related or whether it's a criminal allegation. Obviously, if it's a criminal allegation, they may be interviewed under caution, and they will answer as they see fit, or make no comment as they see fit. But as I say, there's slightly different stages and slightly different scenarios depending on which way we go.
Indeed. So there are many factors to consider, and how you go about managing the entire process of each scenario, so it can be handled differently.
Sure.
And then there are those that are more complex, that would require much more intervention. So the process is bigger.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing with us. You are listening to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters, with me, Antonesia McCartney, and my guest, Richard Mills. We will be right back after this break and a word from our sponsor.
Your safety and convenience are most important to us at Flow. That's why we provide many ways for you to keep your account connected, which now includes FastPay, the new convenient payment option on our website. No registration required. Or download the MyFlow app to pay anytime from anywhere on your smartphone or tablet. If you wish to pay your bill in person, feel free to visit any of our fully sanitized branches. Flow is committed to helping you stay connected. Let's do this together.
Welcome back to the Commission's report, Integrity Matters. I am your host, Antonesia McCartney, the Public Education Officer for the Integrity Commission, and I have here with me today Mr. Richard Mills, our Senior Investigative Officer for the Commission. Just so you're not left out of today's program, feel free to visit our website at www.integritycommission.tc, where you can use our Contact Us feature option there, or you can email us at ask@integritycommission.tc, or you can feel free to call either of our numbers, 941-7847 or 946-1941. We're here with Mr. Richard Mills, and we've been talking about the enforcement arm of the Integrity Commission. And one of the things we would say is, because we're a small community, persons may feel afraid of reporting to the Integrity Commission. So what assurance can we give them with regards to, one, confidence in the Integrity Commission, and two, the confidentiality that the report being made will not be traced back to them?
Firstly, can I say, I understand those concerns. This is a small group of islands with a small population. Everybody knows somebody. There's familial loyalties, there's friendships, there's the reverse of that where there are enemies. Look, what I would say is an individual can absolutely report a matter to myself or my team, or through the systems we have in place, and absolutely be guaranteed that it will remain confidential. We have a reporting system through the website where it can be done anonymously. People can phone up and leave phone messages if they wish to, anonymously. Obviously we would rather that we were able to contact a person back, but I understand on occasions people might not want to do that. But where we have an individual who wishes to perhaps tell us or provide some information to us that they suspect may be involved in an act of corruption, or indeed any other criminality for that matter, they can ask to speak to myself or my colleague, or report it online, and that report would only go to myself and my one colleague that works as the intelligence officer. Now both of us have no familial ties to the Turks and Caicos. Both of us have previously worked in intelligence arenas within the UK, Scotland Yard detectives. We know how to manage intelligence. We will not breach that expectation of keeping it confidential if that's the wish of the individual. When some intelligence perhaps comes in, obviously our aim is to try to review it, develop it, and establish some facts from it which may or may not disprove acts of corruption involving an individual. But we would rather know about it in the first instance than even if it's just somebody anonymously reporting it to us, than not knowing. And the reason we say that is because each little bit of intelligence may start to build a picture. Obviously, the more that we're told, the quicker we could develop that, perhaps. But we are always willing to listen, and rest assured, we will look to review, develop, and what we call sanitise the intelligence, so that the individual that reported it cannot be identified should we need to act upon that information in some sort of manner. If we can corroborate it, we will look for opportunities to corroborate it by other means as well. But I know within the Turks and Caicos generally there is a concern, a fear that if your report matters, I think the term snitches get stitches, I've heard that before now. That absolutely does not apply to anything that is reported to myself or my intelligence officer, and it's only us two that would have sight of that, and who it's and the origins of where that information came from.
Thank you for that reassurance that there's so many things in place, the sanitizing as well as the corroboration, as well as I can share with members, and it was said last week as well, that we're all sworn into an oath of secrecy.
Yep.
And not only that, that the compliance unit as well as the investigation arm have software and measures in place that only those, and as you would have said yourself and the intelligence officer would be privy to certain information.
Sure. Yeah.
As well. And I know that there's to some degree there's some coding as well that takes place. I don't know if I'm calling it coding, but
yeah, it may be the case that we would anonymise the individual, perhaps given them a pseudonym name. This is nothing that probably most listeners haven't seen on the television, and again, there is nobody that knows who the originator of that information is beyond myself and my colleague that works as the intelligence officer.
Yes, thank you very much, and I do hope that is sufficient to ensure our listeners that any information they may report will be held in the strictest confidence.
Sure.
And so we talk about reporting, but how do you go about making a report?
Okay, so there's a number of options. You'll find us quite user friendly. We're in an office in Providenciales and also in Grand Turk. You can come in person. Ideally, we'd prefer if an appointment was made, just in case we are doing something else sooner than just call up at the door. But we will deal where we practically can. There's an online reporting system. You go to our portal, there's an online reporting system, there's email addresses, just a standard email. You can report a matter over the phone, whether it be a full allegation of corruption or whether it just be something that you wish to pass on to us for intelligence purposes. You can even do it through the Crime Stoppers system, which is based out of Miami. Anything that is corruption related for the Integrity Commission would come to our notice, and again it can be reported anonymously that way. Depends on what somebody has to say and how comfortable they are with coming to us. You can come to our office. There may be occasions when we can go out and meet you somewhere. As I say, we're quite user friendly and flexible, and happy where we can to obviously to come to the individual.
Yes, thanks very much for offering the various options. Persons may not want to come to the office. They can call and make an appointment, do it anonymously via our website as well as through Crime Stoppers. And I really want them to know that as a public officer, someone who's serving within a government capacity, you really have a duty to report. And if it's found out, you too can be fined.
Yep.
The other thing is that in making a report, it's not so much about the who, but the what. What have they done? What acts of the corruption code they have breached? How often? who else? And a government worker who would have been incorporated or collaborating in the process and doing the particular act.
Yep,
That is
and
what's most important.
Absolutely, and I appreciate there's occasions when perhaps the public have a misconception that we don't actually do anything, we don't take any notice of things. We absolutely do. We're interested in hearing what people say. The reality is that there are priorities. There is a limit to the amount of things that we can do at any given time, but obviously if a number of issues are reported to us and a common theme develops within a particular department, shall we say, then it may be that we focus our attention on that and we look to target the bigger issue sooner than perhaps 5 or 6 separate allegations about that individual department. So please bear with us. We are very limited in staff numbers. We can't work miracles, but we do try our best to address each and every allegation that's made to some degree. But as I say, there are priorities. It probably won't come as any surprise that matters which may be potentially linked to national security would be a priority. For instance, illegal immigration, sex trafficking, anything that's linked to government officials there, smuggling of other illegal contraband into the country. They would sit hand in hand with probably most national security issues in any country, but they certainly do in this one. They are sort of priority areas. Government contracts, particularly large-scale ones, that is something else which would be a priority and something that we're going to start to focus on a little bit more as well.
Indeed, thanks for sharing that. Indeed, we have, because of the limited resources, we have to prioritize on what is most important, and also what may be a risk to the Turks and Caicos. And if persons fail to report, that the matter will continue to grow and get out of hand, and it shows up in issues with accidents, increasing the accident rate, increasing the cost of living, increase in more persons who would be here illegally, increasing the crime rate. Not saying that the illegals are the only ones committing crime, but just saying that is the way in which it manifests when reports are not made and things are left to just fester and fester away, and then it takes away from the quality of living for all of us here, those who come to work, those who are residing, those who are indigenous, all of us here. It affects our quality of living overall, and that's why it's important for us to speak out and to say something, and we can do it anonymously.
Absolutely. No doubt that as a result of corruption, government funds are lost within an array of different departments. You're probably talking millions of dollars, I would suggest. That money could be far better spent in hospitals, in schools, in policing, in education, in perhaps funding and providing additional salaries to government employees. Just think about it. That's where the money should be going, not into the pockets of the minority of greedy, corrupt people. So please step up and report it.
And indeed, that's why it's important, and that's why we're here on this platform sharing with you how to report, how to do it anonymously, and guaranteeing you the assurance of the confidence. I always say, make the report and then hold us accountable for doing something about it. Of course.
Sure.
So if you're just joining us, listeners, you've missed more than half of today's program, the Commission's report, Integrity Matters, with me and my guest, Mr. Richard Mills. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will hear our full theme song as well as a word from our sponsor. Just so that you know, the theme song that was chosen was the winning song for our inter-primary song competition in 2016, and the winners were Precious Treasures. Do enjoy.
We're floating blindly through space in a ship we don't know how to fly. You may not think you're a crew, but you sure look like one.
On my mark.
Go fast.
Return the protostar to me.
You made your choice, Father. Now I've made mine.
We could lose all of it. Our freedom, our friends.
Don't forget, you're not alone.
Today you're risking everything on a seemingly impossible mission to save others. Nothing's more Starfleet than that.
Look at us, looking good.
I can't believe there are so many stars.
You've just heard our song We Can Make It Better by Precious Treasures. Turks and Caicos, we definitely can make it a better Turks and Caicos. This is the Commission's report. I am Antonesia McCartney, the Public Education Officer for the Integrity Commission, and I'm here with our Senior Investigative Officer, Mr. Richard Mills. And we've been sharing about the enforcement, the investigation role of the Integrity Commission. And I know we've touched on it a bit already, but just to ensure that we're clear, and even for emphasis, and I don't think we can overly emphasize it, why is it that sometimes persons are arrested and charged versus on other occasions we just ask them to come in for an interview?
Okay, so again, it's entirely dependent on the events as they portray, as the evidence as it starts to pan out of what we think we can glean from evidence. As I say, it can every investigation can differ. We only seek to act proportionately and necessarily, and what we consider necessary. If we consider it necessary to bring an individual in under arrest and to interview them that way, because we might be looking to seize their property as a result of a house search or something like that. Under those circumstances, we will perhaps arrest them. It may be that the matter, although has been reported to us as an act of corruption, as far as the investigation has led, it transpires that it's not perhaps an act of corruption. And I would suggest that on occasions the lines can be blurred in respect of what is actually perhaps incompetence, or what may be a little bit of laziness and neglect, which is something separate to corruption. Yes. And we have to bear that in mind. Yes. As well. We're here to listen and be told the facts. We don't make it up. All we are the investigators that go out and seek the evidence and provide a file. That file, if there is an allegation of corruption, is then presented to lawyers within the DPP's office. They review that file and they make a decision from there as to what action should follow. Now, whether that is no further action, whether it is a charge for a corruption type offence, or whether it may come back to us and we think, well, hang on a minute, all right, there's no acts of corruption here, but there is a breach of the discipline code or something like that. And I'm not talking about an innocent mistake, as I've said before, but if there's a clear breach of the discipline code, then that might go back to the relevant department. And I would stress that we can't do everything. We can't act as the eyes and ears and those that prosecute there is a responsibility on each government department and managers within that to deal with discipline-related matters. We will happily advise, speak. We can sometimes put files together if an allegation is made in relation to it, but we can't just be the only people that have to stand up for that. It's usually myself and 3 staff, so you can imagine if, with all the allegations that come in, practically we have to then sort the wheat from the chaff and decide which ones we can, take to the final point, as it were.
Definitely, triaging and prioritizing is
Sure.
very critical, and I'm sure we would all agree maximizing the use of the resources that we do
Absolutely.
have, not running after everything.
Yeah.
And it would be, of course, for efficiency for each department and each ministry to manage accordingly and do their discipline and whatever is necessary, even in areas where mistakes are made with regards to incompetence. You would envision that a training schedule or succession planning or next steps or skill set that may be needed.
There may be
training courses.
An organisation, development need, training, that sort of thing. And I understand that, and people do always need developing. As I say,
Indeed.
we are not here to deal with innocent
With those
mistakes.
aspects.
That is not the Integrity Commission. We have far more important things to do than that.
And I would envision that if reports are made that are for another entity of good governance or another entity, that we also would transfer that information to that entity as well, be a complaints commission, human rights, or
if necessary. We've done that, whether it be there. Another example, sometimes we get an allegation of corruption, which in fact is a fraud. We don't have powers to deal with frauds. That's the Financial Crimes Department of the police, or it may be another crime which is separate to that. We would refer it to the police, or as you say, it may be the Human Rights Commission, or wherever it may be. We often refer matters to other organisations.
entities. Yes, and this one here that's usually always misunderstood, and they would say how many people you've arrested and charged, and they try to link it to our efficiency as if that's the only role that we play. And also they tend to see it as a loss to the Integrity Commission versus a loss to the country, because if someone is serving within a government capacity and they're using the influence or their power in that position to take from government for their own personal richness or enhancement, or their family members or their friends. Therefore, as you said earlier, it is not going into the government's purse to be used fairly, to be distributed equally for the good of the country. It's being siphoned to those, and therefore we must understand that it's indeed a loss to the country. But please share with them. I don't know if you can recall the exact numbers or figures in terms of the arrest and the charges that
I don't have them to hand. In reality, we arrest very few people. I know there's some factions of society will see us as some sort of a pariah. We're not there for that. We are there to help with the good governance and try to make a stand against corruption. And the only way that Turks and Caicos Islands is going to improve on its status is as a result of trying to at least eradicate acts of corruption within the islands. And I would just point out on that, there's a lot of tourists, a lot of people come to the islands. They come for a reason. They come for beautiful beaches, they come for beautiful waters. They spend a lot of money here, whether that be just on holiday as a tourist, or to invest, whether as a business, or whether to buy or build their own property. Ultimately, if corruption spreads and other crime escalates and goes unreported, irrespective of those beautiful beaches and seas, what do you think is going to have to happen? Ultimately, people are going to turn to other places as holiday destinations and other places to invest. Everybody needs to be in it together. Tourism is the number one
It's beautiful by nature.
Yeah,
Yes,
of,
to see that.
of these islands, absolutely. It needs tourists. It enjoys the tourists, but there inevitably, if there is criminality and corruption that goes on within it, that is always a cause for concern. So please bear that in mind and report it.
Yes, it can detract investment because the cost is higher to do business here, and we've seen the costs going up even in terms of grocery shopping and the necessity, the essentials of life, of course, and that is one of the effects of corruption continuing to grow. And just to say, we're not saying that Turks and Caicos is the most corrupt, but corruption does exist here. Corruption exists wherever you find people, and so we're working on combating it, on minimizing it, so that we can have a better quality of living here in the Turks and Caicos. And just before we leave and say our final goodbyes, I would want you to share with our listeners at least one important takeaway with regards to the enforcement unit, whether it's a challenge which you would like their assistance and support in, or whether it's a lesson learned throughout the years that you've been serving as the investigative officer in that capacity.
It is a challenge. The whole job is a challenge, particularly with the limited resources that we have, particularly with working within a small community of people that perhaps don't always want to come forward and report corruption. So there's a number of challenges, and those challenges then roll on in respect of trying to bring a case to court. But we do try, and we do have successes in relation to that. Many individuals within Turks and Caicos Islands government do a professional job and work hard. Unfortunately, there's that small minority that seek to corrupt and take benefit of all from the government coffers through acts of corruption. We would ask that is reported to us, and we will make every effort that we can to try to target and combat it. Just one final point, if I've got time. If you think it's okay for a corrupt official to be paid a few $100s illegally, you're mistaken. Imagine a person that may bribe a public official to pass their driving test but who can't drive a car properly. You may think, yes, so what? What's the big deal? You tell that to the family that's had their child knocked down by that driver because he shouldn't be on the road in the first place. And I'd say the same thing in relation to an illegal immigrant that is here by means of corrupt acts. That individual perhaps gets a job as a builder, a labourer, an electrician. You're building a house, he employs you employ that individual on that build, and then the house catches fire because of some shoddy electrical work where the individual should never be employed in the first place because he doesn't have the qualifications. Just think about it. We're here to help, to advise where we can, but we cannot do it on our own.
Yes, indeed. We need your support, and even the littlest or most what may seem insignificant, it does have a ripple effect. Just like something positive that's done, speaking up, reporting, taking a right decision, it also has a ripple effect. And we can't do it without you. You are a key stakeholder, each and every member of this society. You are a key stakeholder, and while there's a legal duty for those who serve within the government services, I'd like to also say there's a moral duty for those who cherish Turks and Caicos as their home. You too have a moral duty to report, and in reporting, as we said earlier, you can do it anonymously. We do appreciate that this is a small community and there's still some level of fear, and regardless to how much assurance you may give someone with regards to, or any person with regards to confidentiality, there may still be that question. So to err on the safe side, and so we can get the information, which is most important, I would ask you and suggest that you do it anonymously.
Yep.
Thank you, Richard, and thank each of you for joining us today. I hope that you have learned more about the Integrity Commission, and in particular, our enforcement, our investigative arm. I still do welcome you to visit our website at www.integritycommission.tc, or you can email us at ask@integritycommission.tc. Thanks to those of you who will send in your questions, and we invite you to join us next week, Thursday, at 2 p.m. This has been the Commission's report, Integrity Matters. I am Indonesia McCartney.